They tried to shame a single mom and an autistic man in public like their pain was entertainment and their struggle was proof they didn't deserve respect. But when everyone expected him to stay quiet, his reply didn't just stop the laughter. It turned the whole room against the cruelty. Moral question: when someone is already drowning, is judgment ever anything other than a kind of violence? Maya stood under a bus shelter that didn't really shelter anything. Rain slid through a crack in the plastic roof and tapped her collarbone like a cold finger, steady and annoying, the kind of touch that made a person feel singled out by the sky. She kept her shoulders squared anyway, because Noah watched her face the way kids watch a traffic light, learning when it was safe to move. The street smelled like wet metal and coffee drifting from somewhere warmer. In her pocket, coins pressed into her palm, counted and recounted, as if belief could multiply them. Noah's sneakers were darker at the toes, where puddles had claimed them, and he tried to hide that by rocking on his heels, making it look like a game. Maya crouched and tightened the frayed lace, fingers quick from practice. She smiled, big, too big, because a smile could trick the brain for a second, could tell the body there was no danger here. "We're early," she said, as if early meant prepared, as if prepared meant protected. Noah nodded, trusting her like a law. Behind her smile, worry kept knocking. Across the bench sat a man who looked like he was holding himself together by rules only he could hear. Eli's headphones covered his ears, matte black, the kind that sealed the world out when the world got too sharp. He stared at the sidewalk seam, where one square met another, tracing it with his eyes as if it were a path. In his hands was a folded sheet of paper, creased so many times it had become soft at the corners. He pressed his thumb along the fold, again and again, like a heartbeat he could control. A city bus groaned somewhere down the road, and Maya's chest tightened on instinct, that reflex that came from months of being late, of being judged, of being one small mistake away from a letter in the mail that could change everything. The last caseworker had smiled politely while saying words that cut. "Stability matters." Maya heard that sentence at night like a mosquito she couldn't swat. Stability meant money. Stability meant childcare. Stability meant never getting sick. She wondered what word meant love, and why it wasn't enough. Noah tugged her sleeve and pointed at a pigeon hopping in circles near a trash can. "It's dancing," he said, delighted, and Maya let herself believe it for a breath. She watched his face soften into wonder, the way a child's brain could find a bright spot even in grey weather. That innocence hurt sometimes, not because it was weak, but because it was unarmored. She thought of all the eyes that measured him by her choices, as if childhood were a receipt. She swallowed and told herself, not today. Eli flinched when a car horn snapped nearby, his shoulders lifting toward his ears. He didn't look at Maya, not directly, but his gaze moved to Noah's wet shoes, then to the thin jacket Maya wore, then away again, fast, as if looking too long might be rude or dangerous. His lips moved silently, counting or rehearsing, and Maya caught a fragment. "One thing at a time." It sounded like a prayer built for survival. She recognized that tone. People didn't use it unless the world had cornered them before. The bus shelter filled with a couple arguing in stage whispers, a woman clicking her tongue, a man laughing too loud. The sound piled up, messy and unpredictable, and Eli's fingers tightened around the folded paper until the knuckles went pale. Maya noticed the strain in his jaw, the way he held his breath between noises, like he was bracing for impact that never came and still hurt. Her own mind did that sometimes too, always scanning, always expecting the next sentence that would shame her. She wondered what kind of sentence had trained him like that. Noah hummed to himself, a soft looping tune with no words, and Eli's eyes flicked to him again. Something in Eli's posture shifted, a tiny release, like Noah's steady sound gave his nervous system a handrail. Maya felt it too, the way predictable rhythm could calm a racing heart. She'd learned to use songs like bandages when Noah cried, when bills arrived, when strangers stared. She watched Eli listening without meaning to, and a strange thought landed. Maybe Noah was helping him without knowing it. Maybe kindness didn't always announce itself. Maya's phone vibrated in her pocket, brief and sharp. She didn't want to look, because messages had become tiny doors that opened into fear. Still, she pulled it out. A subject line flashed from an unfamiliar address. "Regarding your custody review." The words made her vision narrow, like the world tunneled. She had done everything they asked. She had attended every meeting. She had never missed a pickup, never missed a meal if she could help it. Her thumb hovered, and her mind filled the silence with worst-case stories. Eli must have sensed her shift, because his head angled slightly, not quite toward her face, but close enough to notice. He didn't ask what was wrong, maybe because questions could feel like pressure, maybe because he knew some things weren't safe to say out loud in public. Instead, he reached into his bag slowly, carefully, and pulled out a sealed pack of crackers. He held it out toward Noah, arm extended like a bridge he wasn't sure would hold. Noah looked to Maya for permission, and Maya hesitated, weighing risk and gratitude in the same heartbeat. Maya nodded once. Noah accepted the crackers with 2 hands, solemn like it was a gift that mattered. "Thank you," Noah said, and Eli's shoulders dropped a fraction, relief passing through him like warm water. Maya searched Eli's face for the usual signs people wore when they wanted something back: smugness, expectation, control. But she saw none of that. She saw effort. She saw someone trying to do the right thing without knowing if it would be welcomed. It made her throat sting in a way that surprised her. Eli finally spoke, voice low, words chosen with care. "Rain," he said, as if naming it made it less chaotic. Then, after a pause that felt like he was stepping over a line inside his mind, he added, "Crowds are loud." He touched the edge of his headphones and glanced down at the folded paper. "This helps." He didn't explain what this meant, and Maya didn't push, but curiosity lit in her like a small match. People carried different kinds of lifelines. She wondered what his was pulling him away from. The bus turned the corner at last, brakes hissing, doors folding open with a sigh. Everyone moved forward. Maya's thumb still hovered over the email, the screen dimming and brightening, as if impatient with her fear. Eli rose at the same time, paper tucked tight in his fist, eyes fixed on the bus steps like they might change shape. Maya stepped on with Noah, and as she did, she felt the message in her pocket buzzing like a second heartbeat. She couldn't ignore much longer. Before the doors closed, she finally tapped the email, then froze at the first line. "Before we proceed," it read, "we need to discuss the anonymous report that was filed about your home. If you were in Maya's place, would you open the rest right now, or would you wait until you could breathe? And why? Put your answer here below in the comments." The bus smelled like damp coats and old plastic, heat blasting from vents that never warmed evenly. Maya stood gripping the overhead bar, Noah pressed against her hip, and she kept the phone angled away, as if the screen could betray her. The words, "anonymous report," pulsed behind her eyes, turning every ordinary sound into a threat. Her brain tried to fill the blank with images: mold on the ceiling, unpaid bills, Noah's bruised knee from the playground, anything that could be twisted into neglect. She scrolled, but only enough to see the next fragment before panic made her stop. Concern for child safety, unstable environment, recommendation for review. The language was polite, almost gentle, which somehow made it worse. Maya had learned that cruelty often came dressed as concern. She wanted to laugh at the idea that love wasn't safe, that exhaustion looked like danger on paper. She swallowed hard, because if she cried now, Noah would feel it like weather changing, and he would blame himself. Noah leaned in, whispering like the bus was a library. "Mum, are we still going to the place with the donuts?" He meant the cafe, where she had promised him a treat after her interview, a little bribery to make grown-up problems smaller. Maya's mouth formed yes before her mind could agree. "Still," she said, and the lie tasted like metal. In her head, she calculated time, bus stops, the interview, the possibility that someone might show up at her door tonight with a clipboard and a smile. Eli stood a few feet away, hands locked around a vertical pole, shoulders stiff as if the bus itself were too close. His gaze tracked patterns, the blinking stop request light, the map above the windows, the way people's feet made a restless rhythm. Noise rose and fell in waves, and every laugh behind him made his fingers jump. Yet he kept his body planted, like he had decided that leaving would be losing. Maya noticed his folded paper again, tucked into his coat pocket now, protected like a secret. A man in a wrinkled suit argued with someone on speakerphone, repeating the word liability as if it were a weapon. Two teenagers traded glances and snorted at a woman counting coins near the back. The bus held 1,000 tiny judgments, some loud, most silent. Maya felt them like cold air seeping under a door. She wondered who had filed the report, who had watched her life like it was a show they could review and rate, stars for stability, 0 for struggle. Her phone buzzed again, a follow-up message sliding in with a tone that pretended to be helpful. "Please respond within 48 hours to avoid escalation." 48 hours. 2 days. The number slammed into her chest like a countdown. She imagined a courtroom without her there, strangers deciding what Noah deserved. She imagined Noah's toothbrush in a different bathroom. A primal alarm rose, an ancient fear that didn't need words, only a body that knew what it meant to lose something precious. At the next stop, the bus doors folded open and a woman with a bright scarf stepped on, smiling at everyone like she belonged everywhere. She greeted the driver by name. Maya recognized that kind of confidence, the kind money and safety could buy. The woman's eyes scanned the bus and paused on Maya and Noah, just long enough to measure. Not warmth, not curiosity, something sharper, disguised as friendliness. Maya's stomach tightened because the look felt familiar, like the first frame of a bad memory. The woman moved down the aisle and took the seat across from Maya without asking, crossing one leg over the other. Her perfume was expensive and clean, like a promise that nothing had ever gone wrong near her. "Cute kid," she said, and Noah gave a polite smile that made Maya ache. Then the woman's gaze dropped to Maya's phone screen, still lit with official words. "Oh," she added softly, "those kinds of emails are stressful. I used to work with families." The sentence landed too perfectly, like a key finding its lock. Maya forced her face into neutral, the way she did with landlords and teachers and receptionists who could decide her fate in a moment. "We're fine," she said. The woman nodded as if she believed her, but her eyes didn't soften. "Of course," she replied, "it's just people worry when they see certain things." She let the words hang. Certain things. Maya felt heat climb her neck. She wanted to ask what she meant, but asking would admit fear, and fear was blood in the water for people who fed on control. Noah tore open the cracker pack carefully, offering one to Maya like he was sharing treasure. Maya took it and smiled, chewing even though her throat was tight. The woman watched the exchange with an expression that could have been admiration, if it weren't so practiced. "He's sweet," she said. "Kids need structure, consistency, the right influences." Maya heard the implication hidden inside the compliment, the way the brain notices threat in tone before it understands words. Her grip tightened on the overhead bar until her fingers hurt. Eli's head turned slightly, the smallest movement, but it was enough. His eyes landed on the woman's scarf, then her hands, then the badge clipped to her bag, half covered but visible. A logo, a non-profit name printed in neat letters. He went very still, like a deer hearing a twig snap. His thumb found the edge of the folded paper in his pocket, rubbing the crease. Maya didn't see the badge clearly, but she saw Eli's reaction, and a chill moved through her that had nothing to do with rain. The woman leaned closer, lowering her voice to something intimate. "If you ever need guidance," she murmured, "there are programs for mothers who are overwhelmed. Sometimes it's kinder to accept help before things get complicated." The word complicated hit like a bruise. Maya's mind flashed to the caseworker's smile, the same polite pressure wrapped in concern. She realized the woman wasn't offering help. She was offering surrender. Maya's pulse pounded in her ears, drowning out the bus engine. Maya glanced toward the window, pretending to look outside, but she was really checking her reflection, checking that her face didn't show how scared she was. The street slid by in wet streaks. A daycare sign, a courthouse in the distance, a billboard about family values. It all felt like the city was whispering the same message: behave, perform, prove you deserve what you already love. She thought of replying to the email, but what could she say? That someone was circling her life like a vulture with a smile. Eli shifted just one step, placing himself slightly between Maya and the woman without touching either of them. His movement was subtle, almost accidental, but it changed the air. The woman's eyes flicked to him, assessing, and her smile tightened at the corners. Eli didn't meet her gaze. He stared at the floor, breathing through his nose in measured counts. Then, in a voice so quiet it forced the ear to lean in, he said a single phrase that made Maya's skin prickle. "That logo. It's on the report." Maya's breath caught as if Eli had reached into her pocket and squeezed her heart. "What do you mean?" she whispered, but the bus was loud enough to hide panic in plain sight. Eli's eyes stayed down, fixed on the speckled floor, yet his words came precise, like he was reading a label only he could see. "The letters," he said. "The shape. Same blue mark." He tapped his own pocket once, where the folded paper lived, then went still again, bracing as if speaking cost him something physical. The woman in the bright scarf tilted her head, smile still present, but thinner now, like a sheet stretched over something sharp. "I'm sorry. Did I hear my organization mentioned?" she asked, voice sweet enough to be weaponized. Maya felt a familiar trap. Deny and look guilty, agree, and give her power. Noah crunched a cracker, unaware that the adults' bodies had turned into a silent argument. Maya forced her lips to move slowly. "He didn't mention anything," she said. "We're just riding." The woman laughed softly, not amused, more like she was testing how far she could push. "Oh, it's fine," she said, and her gaze slid to Eli's headphones with a tiny curl of judgment. "Some people misread things." Misread. The word was a gentle insult, suggesting Eli's mind was unreliable. Eli's shoulders rose, and Maya saw the effort it took for him not to retreat into himself. A small tremor ran through his hand on the pole, then stopped, like he'd grabbed the tremor by the throat. Maya made herself look at the woman directly. "What's your name?" she asked, surprising even herself. The question wasn't aggressive, but it was solid, a line drawn in wet sand. The woman blinked once, then smiled wider. "Darlene," she said. "I work with a family outreach initiative." She said it like it was a badge of goodness. Maya nodded as if impressed, while her mind replayed the email's wording: anonymous report, concern, recommendation, outreach, initiative, words that sounded like help until they took your hands away from you. Noah leaned against Maya, sleepy from the warmth of the bus, and she felt the weight of his trust like a responsibility too sacred to fail. Her brain started building patterns, the way it did when danger approached. Darlene appears right after the email. Darlene mentions families. Darlene notices the screen. The timing was too neat. Maya's fear sharpened into something else. Clarity. Someone had been watching, not in a dramatic way, in the worst way, with forms and smiles and concern. Eli's voice dropped even lower. "She's not random," he murmured, words clipped like he was cutting them free. Maya wanted to ask how he knew, but she sensed that pushing would overwhelm him. So she asked the safer question. "Do you know her?" Eli shook his head once, fast. "I know the logo," he said. "I saw it on a door, on a folder, when they talked about my mom." The sentence ended abruptly, like he'd hit a wall inside his memory and couldn't go through it. Darlene's eyes flicked between them, catching the whispering, the tension, the sudden alliance. Her smile stayed, but her posture shifted, shoulders back, chin slightly raised, like she had stepped into authority. "You seem stressed," she said to Maya, voice honeyed. "Sometimes moms don't realize how much their stress impacts a child." Maya's chest tightened. The cruelty wasn't in the words, it was in the implication that Maya herself was the hazard. She pictured Noah as a file number. She pictured her love being translated into risk. Maya tried to move toward the back of the bus, creating distance, but the aisle was crowded. Darlene followed with her eyes, not her feet, like she didn't need to chase. "If you ever want to talk," Darlene added, "we can connect you with resources. Temporary placements, respite care, supervised visits." Each phrase was a step down a staircase Maya didn't want to see. Temporary placements, supervised visits. Her stomach turned. The bus rocked over a pothole, and the sudden jolt felt like the ground agreeing with Darlene. Noah looked up, hearing the tone, if not the meaning. "Mum?" he asked, small voice, big question. Maya smiled instantly, because children read faces before language. "Nothing, honey," she said, "just grown-up talk." But her hands were cold. She realized with a sick clarity that Darlene wasn't trying to help today. Darlene was collecting a moment, a look, a reaction. Proof that Maya was unstable. Maya's body wanted to either fight or flee, and neither was safe. Eli inhaled through his nose in measured counts, the way people do when their nervous system is on fire and they're trying to put it out with math. His thumb pressed the paper in his pocket again, crease against skin, as if it anchored him. He didn't look at Darlene, he looked at Noah. Something softened in his expression, a protective focus, like Noah's presence gave him a reason to stay regulated. Then Eli spoke, still quiet, but firmer. "Please stop," he said. 2 words, simple, clean, hard to twist. Darlene's smile didn't break. "Stop what?" she asked. Innocence performed. Eli's jaw tightened. "Stop trying to make her scared," he said, voice shaking just enough to show the effort. Maya felt tears threaten, not from weakness, but from the shock of being defended. Darlene's eyes narrowed almost invisibly. "Sir," she said, "I'm just offering assistance." Eli nodded once. "Assistance doesn't sound like threats," he replied, and a few nearby passengers glanced over. The driver announced the next stop, and Maya's mind raced. Should she get off now? Change routes? Disappear? But disappearing could look like guilt, and guilt was what the report wanted. She pictured herself explaining to a caseworker why she ran from a woman offering resources. The moral dilemma tightened. Protect Noah by avoiding eyes, or protect Noah by standing her ground where everyone could see she was not ashamed. Her heart slammed against her ribs, and she realized she needed a plan that didn't look like panic. Eli shifted again and with a careful slowness pulled the folded paper halfway from his pocket as if showing it might steady him. Maya caught a glimpse of handwriting, worn ink, the kind of paper that had been held during hard nights. Eli didn't open it yet. He only held it like a warning to himself. Remember who you are. Darlene noticed the paper too, and for the first time her expression flickered. Recognition, maybe, or calculation. "Where did you get that?" she asked, voice suddenly sharper. Eli's eyes stayed down, but his answer landed like a stone dropped in still water. "From the same office that sent her that email," he said, "and it wasn't meant for me to keep." Maya's blood went cold at the implication. Not meant for him to keep. That meant it had been taken or saved or rescued. It meant Eli had seen something he shouldn't have. Darlene's smile finally vanished for half a second, and in that brief gap, Maya saw the truth. Darlene wasn't here by chance. Maya's thoughts scattered, then snapped into a single sharp line. This wasn't about her parenting, it was about power. Her hand drifted to Noah's shoulder, not gripping, just grounding, as if touch could remind her brain that the present was real and not a nightmare. Darlene's eyes stayed on Eli's half-hidden paper, and the bus suddenly felt like a small room where everyone pretended not to listen. Maya heard her own pulse, louder than the engine. She wanted to ask Eli what he meant, but the wrong question could invite the wrong answer. Darlene recovered first, smoothing her scarf as if she could smooth the moment. "Sir," she said, voice controlled, "that's confidential material. You should hand it over." The words were calm, but the threat underneath made Maya's skin prickle. Confidential meant they could accuse him. It meant they could paint him as unstable, dangerous, untrustworthy. Maya had seen how quickly a story could be rewritten by whoever held the paperwork. Eli swallowed, Adam's apple bobbing, and his fingers curled tighter around the paper like it was the only honest thing in reach. Eli's lips parted, then closed again. He seemed to search for the correct script, the socially safe one, and not find it. His gaze flicked to the window where rain drew long lines down the glass, orderly, predictable. "It was in the waiting room," he finally said. "On the floor." His voice cracked on the last word, as if he hated how unbelievable it sounded. Maya believed him anyway, because she recognized that particular kind of truth, messy, inconvenient, and spoken with no talent for persuasion. Darlene's mouth tightened, like she'd been handed a flaw in her plan. Noah tugged Maya's sleeve again, pointing at a sign outside. "That place has balloons," he said, and Maya glanced out to see a storefront with bright colors, a child's haircut place maybe, and the sight felt like another universe. Normal, safe. The contrast hurt. She turned back and forced a gentle tone. "We'll see," she told him, while her mind ran fast calculations. If Darlene was connected to the report, then this conversation could become evidence. Maya needed witnesses, not privacy. She needed the bus, not the sidewalk. A woman near the front adjusted her tote bag and looked back with narrowed eyes, attention finally caught by Darlene's sharper tone. A man in a baseball cap stopped scrolling and listened. Maya felt the social tide beginning to shift, people deciding whether to stay asleep or wake up. Darlene seemed to sense it too. She softened her voice immediately. "I'm concerned," she said louder now, for the audience. "This mother may need support." It was a brilliant move. Frame Maya as fragile, herself as savior, Eli as confusion. Maya's mouth went dry. She understood the psychological trap. If she argued, she looked defensive. If she stayed quiet, she looked ashamed. Either way, Darlene got a story. Maya looked down at Noah, at the crumbs on his lip, at the trusting crease between his brows, and something in her steadied. Shame was contagious, but so was courage. She lifted her chin. "We don't know you," Maya said, voice even. "Please stop talking about my child." The words came out calm, which made them stronger. Darlene blinked, then smiled again, smaller this time. "Of course," she replied. "I just worry when I see a child in unpredictable circumstances." She glanced at Eli's headphones like they were part of the circumstances. Maya's stomach twisted. The cruelty was now shared, spread toward the most vulnerable target in the scene. Eli's breathing quickened, the beginning of overload, and Maya could almost see his mind trying to protect itself by shutting doors. She wanted to reach for him, but she didn't want to touch without permission. Eli surprised her. He took one slow breath, then another, counting silently, shoulders rising and falling with effort. He pulled the folded paper out fully, not opening it, just holding it up at chest level. A few passengers leaned in, curious, because curiosity is a hook the brain can't ignore. Darlene's eyes widened a fraction. "Put that away," she hissed, too sharp for her helpful mask. Eli didn't raise his voice. He didn't glare. He simply stayed standing, shaking, and said, "You're not here to help." The bus hit another stoplight, pausing as if the city itself wanted to watch. Maya felt the weird stillness that comes right before something irreversible. Darlene looked around and realized she had an audience. She changed tactics again. "Ma'am," she said to Maya, "I'd love to schedule a home visit to ensure everything is safe." Home visit. The phrase landed like a boot on Maya's chest. It wasn't an offer. It was a lever. Maya imagined strangers walking through her apartment, opening cabinets, making notes about dishes in the sink like they were moral failures. Maya's brain flashed a memory she hadn't touched in years, her own childhood kitchen, her mother whispering, "Don't say anything or they'll take you." That old fear returned with the same taste, the same cold in the mouth. She realized how generational shame worked, how it trained people to obey even when obedience harmed them. She looked at Noah and promised herself, silently, that he would not inherit that training. The promise didn't erase fear, but it gave her a direction to move. Eli's hand trembled harder now, and he tucked the paper against his chest as if shielding it from being snatched. "They did visits," he said suddenly, voice breaking. "To my mom." The sentence opened a door to a story Maya hadn't expected, and the bus seemed to lean closer. Eli swallowed, eyes glossy but focused. They smiled. They wrote things down, and then they told her she was failing because I was me. His words were raw, unpolished, which made them impossible to dismiss as performance. A low, "That's messed up," came from somewhere behind Maya. Another passenger muttered, "Leave her alone." Tiny sparks. Darlene's jaw clenched as she realized the narrative was slipping from her hands. She leaned toward Eli, voice quiet again, meant to intimidate without witnesses noticing. "You don't want trouble," she said. "Give me the paper." Maya saw Eli flinch, and she saw the moment his nervous system begged him to comply, just to end the stress. She couldn't let that happen, not for him, not for Noah. Maya stepped closer to Eli, not touching him, just aligning her body beside his, like a silent declaration. "No," she said, simple, firm. "You can't demand anything from us." Darlene's eyes flashed with something ugly, quickly hidden. "Then I'll document your refusal," she replied, pulling out her phone with practiced ease, thumb hovering like a judge's gavel. Maya's stomach dropped. Document. Refusal. The words sounded official enough to ruin lives. The passengers watched, uncertain, and Maya felt the room teeter. Eli's gaze locked on Darlene's phone, not with fear, but with a strange focus, like he'd found a pattern that didn't belong. His voice turned very quiet, almost thoughtful. "That's not your work phone," he said. "Your organization's policy says staff can't record families on personal devices." Darlene froze for half a beat, just long enough for Maya to feel hope surge, dangerous and bright. How did Eli know that policy? And why did it sound like he'd read more than one rule they didn't expect him to read? Darlene's hand stayed midair, phone angled like a mirror that suddenly showed her own face. The bus noise didn't change, but the social temperature did. A few people leaned back as if they'd smelled something off. Maya watched Darlene's eyes flicker, doing math. How to keep authority without revealing motive. "Policies change," Darlene said lightly, but the lightness came too late, like a laugh after a funeral. Eli's grip tightened on the pole, and his shoulders trembled, yet his gaze stayed steady on the device she held. Maya's mind latched onto Eli's certainty, the way a drowning person grabs a rope. If he knew policy, he'd been close to that organization in a way that mattered. Maybe he'd been harmed by them, or maybe he'd studied them like people study storms. She wanted to ask, but asking here would feed the spectacle. Noah looked between faces, confused by the tension but tracking it anyway, his small nervous system copying hers. Maya rubbed his back in slow circles, giving his brain a rhythm to cling to, the same way she did during thunder. Darlene slid the phone back into her bag with a tight smile. "Let's not escalate," she said. now sounding like the victim of everyone else's discomfort. A man in a baseball cap snorted softly. The woman with the tote bag narrowed her eyes harder, the kind of look that said she'd raised kids and didn't tolerate predators in polite clothing. Darlene's gaze swept the bus, reading the room, then returned to Maya with practiced sympathy. "Ma'am, the email you received is serious," she said. "Ignoring it could harm your child." The words hit Maya like a shove because they were built to. Her brain flashed images again. Noah in a stranger's living room calling for her in the night. She forced herself to breathe low because panic made mistakes, and mistakes became evidence. "I'm not ignoring anything," Maya said. "But you don't get to corner me in public." Darlene's smile twitched. "Corner?" she repeated, as if the idea were absurd. "I sat down. I offered support. That's all." Gaslight wrapped in perfume. Eli's voice cut in, quiet but clear. "You timed it?" he said. No accusation in his tone, just observation. After the message, Darlene's nostrils flared, then smoothed. "Sir, you're making connections that aren't there," she replied, returning to the old insult. "Misread, unreliable." Maya felt anger rise, not loud, not wild, but sharp and protective. She'd spent too long watching people dismiss others because their minds worked differently. That dismissal was how systems stayed clean on paper. The bus stopped near a strip mall, and the doors opened with a sigh. Darlene stood adjusting her scarf again, like she was leaving a meeting she'd controlled. "If you change your mind," she said to Maya, "call the number in the email. Ask for me." She said it softly, as if sharing a secret. Maya's stomach dropped. Ask for me. That meant Darlene wasn't just a random volunteer. She had access. She had a role. Noah leaned forward to look out the door, and Maya realized Darlene planned to exit before anyone could challenge her. Eli moved faster than Maya expected, stepping into the aisle just enough to block Darlene without touching her. His body trembled with the strain of confrontation, but he held his ground. "What's your last name?" he asked. The question was simple, but it shifted power. Names make people accountable. Darlene's smile widened, brittle. "That's not appropriate," she said. Eli nodded once, as if he'd predicted that exact response. "Then you shouldn't ask for mine either," he replied, and a few passengers murmured approval. Darlene's eyes flashed. Then she leaned closer, lowering her voice to something meant only for them. "You think you're protecting her," she said, "but you're making her look unstable." The cruelty was surgical. Make Maya fear that defense itself would cost her. Maya felt her hands go numb. For a second, shame tried to crawl up her throat like bile. Then she looked at Noah and saw his brow pinched, sensing harm. That did it. Shame didn't belong to her. It belonged to the person using it. Maya stepped forward, voice steady, louder now so witnesses could hear without feeling forced to listen. "Stop talking about my stability," she said. "If you have official business, send it through official channels." Darlene's smile froze. She glanced at the driver, maybe hoping he'd intervene, but the driver stared straight ahead, tired and uninterested in helping someone who looked like trouble. The doors stayed open, the moment stretching. Darlene realized she couldn't win here without revealing teeth. She stepped down onto the sidewalk, rain spitting onto her scarf. Before the doors closed, she turned back and said, "You'll regret making this difficult." The sentence was soft, almost polite, which made it terrifying. Then she was gone, swallowed by wet parking lot reflections and moving cars. The bus doors folded shut. Maya exhaled, but relief didn't arrive. Her nervous system stayed lit, because threats don't end when the person leaves. They echo. Noah hugged her waist, and she held him too tight for a second, then loosened, ashamed of her own fear. Eli sank into the nearest seat, like his muscles had finally been allowed to stop performing. His hands shook openly now, the delayed crash after holding it together. Maya sat beside him without asking, leaving a small, respectful space between them. "Thank you," she whispered, and Eli nodded, eyes on the floor. "I didn't do it right," he said, voice rough. Maya blinked. "You did it brave," she answered. Eli's throat moved as he swallowed, and his fingers found the folded paper again, rubbing the crease like a wound. The bus rolled forward, and the city outside looked normal again. People with umbrellas, a neon sign flickering, someone carrying groceries. Like cruelty, hadn't just tried to take a child with paperwork. Maya reopened the email, forcing her eyes to move. Near the bottom, a line she hadn't noticed before caught her attention. Case reference. Hartwell Partners. The name meant nothing to her, but Eli's head lifted the instant he heard it. His face changed, as if the word had grabbed him by the spine. "Hartwell," Eli repeated, barely audible. Maya turned, searching his expression for meaning. He didn't explain yet. He seemed to be fighting a memory that came with too much noise. After a long breath, he said, "That's the company that funds them." Maya stared at the email, mind racing. A company. Funding. Outreach as a tool. Her interview today was at a cafe, harmless, small. So why did a corporate name sit inside a custody email like a fingerprint? What did a business want with her life? Noah's voice cut through, gentle and sleepy. "Mom, are you mad?" Maya kissed his hair. "No," she lied again, softer this time. "Just thinking." Her thoughts spiraled toward the interview she was heading to. The one chance to stabilize everything, the one place where she'd have to smile for strangers who judged mothers with tired eyes. She imagined walking into that cafe and seeing a logo on the wall, blue and familiar. She imagined Darlene's confident greeting to the manager, and she realized, with dread pooling low, that the interview might not be an opportunity at all. Eli stared out the window, then spoke as if reading from a list only he carried. "If Hartwell is involved," he said, "they won't stop at emails." Maya's stomach tightened. The bus turned onto a street lined with restaurants, including the bright cafe where she planned to interview, its window glowing warm against the rain. Maya's phone buzzed one more time, a new message popping up before she could breathe. "Interview rescheduled. Do not arrive." The sender was the cafe. Maya's hands went cold, and she looked up at the cafe door, just in time to see Darlene step inside. Maya stared through the smeared bus window as if her eyes could stop time. Darlene's scarf flashed like a warning light in the cafe's warm glow, a bright streak crossing into safety she didn't deserve. The contrast made Maya nauseous. Inside was cinnamon sugar air, and people laughing over mugs. Outside was rain, a mother clutching a phone, and a child who still believed in donuts. Maya's thumb hovered over the reschedule message again. "Do not arrive." It sounded less like scheduling and more like exile. Noah perked up at the sight of the cafe sign, his whole face lifting. "We're here," he said, hope rising clean and simple. Maya's heart cracked at the purity of it. She forced a smile that nearly held, then bent close. "Not today, sweetheart," she whispered, and his joy fell into confusion. Disappointment flickered across his face, quick but deep, like a small wound that didn't bleed but remembered. Maya felt guilt bite her, because kids don't just feel loss. They map it, building expectations about what promises mean. Eli's gaze followed hers to the cafe. He didn't look surprised. He looked grimly confirmed, like a hypothesis turning into fact. "They push where it hurts," he murmured, voice barely there. Maya swallowed. "How do you know?" she asked, but Eli's jaw tightened and he didn't answer, as if explaining would open a room he'd boarded up for years. The bus rolled past, carrying them away from the warm windows. Maya watched the cafe shrink behind rain streaks, feeling like she was being escorted out of a life she was trying to earn. Her phone vibrated again. Not an email this time, an alert from a neighborhood group she'd joined when she moved into her apartment. A new post, already getting reactions. "Saw a child left unattended at a bus stop in the rain. Is this neglect?" The post had no name, but the wording felt familiar, like Darlene's voice translated into text. Maya's stomach dropped so hard it felt like falling. She scrolled and saw a blurred photo, her and Noah under the shelter, her hand in her pocket counting coins. The world tilted. She looked around the bus, suddenly aware of every phone, every lens, every person who could turn her life into a story without permission. Noah leaned into her, sensing her fear and trying to solve it with closeness. Maya held him, but her hands shook. Her mind raced with the brutal logic of systems. Pictures become concerns, concerns become reports, reports become visits, visits become removals. It wasn't melodrama. It was bureaucracy dressed as morality. She tasted panic, metallic and hot, and forced herself to breathe through it. Eli leaned slightly closer, careful not to invade her space. "That's how they do it," he said, voice steadying into something almost clinical, though still human. "They create a record." Maya's eyes stung. "But it's a lie," she whispered. Eli nodded. "They don't need truth," he replied. "They need volume." The sentence struck her because it explained something she'd never had language for. Repeated suspicion becomes reality in other people's brains. The more a claim is seen, the easier it is believed. Her life was becoming a rumor with receipts. The bus stopped near a public library, and Maya's mind snapped to one thought: paper fights paper. If someone was building a file on her, she needed her own. She stood quickly, almost tripping, and Noah grabbed her hand. Eli rose too, hesitation flickering, then commitment. They stepped off into the rain. The library doors opened with a warm sigh, the smell of books and carpet and quiet wrapping around them like a blanket. Maya felt her nervous system unclench a fraction. Here, silence wasn't judgment. It was permission to think. Inside, Maya guided Noah toward the children's corner. Bright rugs, a fish tank bubbling, a poster that said, "Kindness" in bold letters. Noah knelt to watch the fish, absorbed, his body finally relaxed. Maya turned to Eli. "You said you saw their folders," she whispered. "How?" Eli stared at the floor tiles, counting seams. "My mom," he began, then stopped. His throat worked like the words were stuck behind a locked door. "She asked for help," he finally said. "They called it support. Then they made her prove she deserved me." Maya's chest tightened, not just with sympathy but with recognition. "What happened?" she asked gently. Eli's fingers twitched, then he pulled the folded paper out, laying it on the table like something fragile. "She wrote this," he said, tapping it once, "after the meeting where they told her I was a risk factor." He didn't say autism like a diagnosis. He said it like a label that had been used as a blade. Maya felt anger rise again, slow and heavy. She realized the cruelty wasn't random. It was patterned. They sat at a computer station. Maya logged into her email, hands steadier now because she had a task. Eli hovered behind her shoulder, reading quickly, noticing details her stress had skipped. In the email's footer, he pointed to a line of tiny text. "In partnership with Hartwell Community Impact." "There," he said. Maya's stomach clenched. Hartwell wasn't just funding, it was branding itself through impact, using families as proof of virtue. She imagined corporate meetings where people discussed outcomes, while children became bullet points. Maya opened the neighborhood post again, scrolling through comments. Some were cruel, laughing at her bad choices. Others were performatively concerned. A few defended her, but their voices were smaller, drowned by certainty. Her cheeks burned with shame, the ancient kind that makes a person want to disappear. She closed her eyes and fought the urge, because disappearing would feed the narrative. She clicked the blurred photo and noticed something, a reflection in a nearby car window. A figure standing farther back, holding the phone. The scarf wasn't visible, but the posture felt familiar. Eli leaned in, eyes narrowing with intense focus. "Zoom," he said. Maya did, and pixels broke into grain, but a detail survived, a lanyard swinging. the same shade of blue as the logo Eli had recognized. Maya's throat tightened. Darlene hadn't just shown up on the bus. She'd been there at the shelter, watching from a distance, waiting for the moment that looked worst. Maya felt violated in a quiet, devastating way. Not attacked, not shouted at, curated. Her poverty had been staged into evidence. A librarian approached, gentle voice, asking if they needed help finding anything. Maya almost laughed at the kindness. It felt foreign after the last hour. Resources, Maya said, the word bitter now. Legal aid, family services. The librarian nodded without judgment and handed her a pamphlet. Maya's eyes fell on a line. Free clinic, Thursday evenings. Tonight, the date on her phone confirmed it. Relief sparked, but it came with fear. Walking into help could mean walking into another net. She hesitated, moral dread mixing with necessity. Eli's hand hovered over the pamphlet, then retreated. Some help is real, he said quietly, as if convincing himself too. Maya looked at him, seeing the cost of that sentence. He had been burned by support before, yet he was still willing to try again for someone else. That kind of courage wasn't loud, it was stubborn. Maya nodded, swallowing. "We go," she said, more to herself than to him. Noah looked up from the fish tank. "Are we in trouble?" he asked, eyes wide. Maya crouched to Noah's level, forcing softness into her face. "No," she said. "We're getting stronger." Noah studied her, then nodded like he accepted the mission. Maya stood, pamphlet in hand, and for the first time all day her fear had a direction. As they walked toward the exit, Eli slowed, staring at the glass door. Outside, across the street, a car sat idling with wipers moving like restless hands. Maya couldn't see the driver clearly, but Eli's whole body tensed. "That car," he whispered, "was at the shelter too." Maya paused with her hand on the library door handle, feeling the strange terror of being observed without proof. The car across the street looked ordinary, grey, mid-sized, nothing that screamed danger. Yet its stillness felt intentional, like a sentence waiting to be finished. Wipers swept back and forth with patient rhythm, almost soothing, which made it worse. Noah slipped his small hand into Maya's, trusting her to translate the world into safety. Eli stood slightly behind, shoulders rigid, eyes fixed on the windshield, as if he could read thoughts through glass. Maya forced herself to step outside anyway, because fear loves to turn hesitation into habit. The cold air slapped her cheeks. She adjusted Noah's hood and walked toward the crosswalk, moving with the careful confidence she'd learned to perform for landlords and caseworkers. The car didn't move. It just watched. Maya told herself it could be coincidence, but her brain didn't believe its own comfort stories. She felt the old instinct to shrink, to make herself invisible, and she hated that instinct because it had never protected her, only trained her. Eli's breathing changed, becoming shallow, and Maya heard him whisper numbers under his breath, a self-made anchor. He didn't look at her, but his voice reached her anyway. "If they're collecting," he said, "they want a reaction." Maya understood immediately. A mother who looks afraid becomes unstable. A mother who argues becomes aggressive. The trap was designed so every emotion could be filed as failure. She straightened her spine and softened her face, even though her stomach was twisting. She would not feed their story with her panic. At the curb, Noah pointed at a dog across the street, tail wagging under an umbrella-holding owner. "Look," he said, brightening, and Maya let herself borrow his innocence for a second. She waved at the dog, smiling like her life wasn't being edited behind the scenes. Her smile felt like armor made of thin paper, but paper was still something. Eli flinched at a sudden motorcycle roar, then steadied. The car's engine hummed, low and constant, a quiet witness that didn't blink. They crossed toward the legal aid clinic building, a squat place with peeling paint and a sign that had seen better days. The kind of building that held people's last chances. Inside, fluorescent light washed everyone the same pale color. Rich and poor equalized into tired faces. Maya signed in with a pen chained to the counter, the chain scraping like a reminder that nothing here was fully free. She wrote her name carefully, as if neat handwriting could argue for her worth. Eli hovered behind her like a shadow that chose to stay. A waiting room TV played muted daytime news, captions scrolling about community partnerships and family safety initiatives. Maya's eyes snagged on a logo in the corner of the screen, Hartwell, the same blue mark. Her skin tightened as if the air had become thinner. The segment showed smiling executives handing oversized checks to nonprofits, applause like rain on a roof. The captions praised accountability and stronger families. Maya's throat burned. Accountability, stronger. Words that sounded like care, but felt like surveillance when aimed at people like her. Noah climbed into a chair and swung his legs, humming again, trying to make the waiting feel smaller. Eli sat on the edge of a seat, hands clasped, paper tucked safe. Maya filled out forms, the questions quietly humiliating. Income, housing, childcare, father involvement. Each blank felt like a place someone could punish her for being alone. She wrote anyway, because refusing to answer was another kind of guilt. She glanced at Eli and saw his eyes darting to every new person entering, cataloguing patterns, exits, noise levels. His vigilance looked like anxiety, but it also looked like intelligence. A woman in a blazer stepped into the room, scanning faces, then called, "Maya Alvarez." Maya stood so fast her knees wobbled. She followed the woman down a hallway that smelled like old coffee and copier toner. The woman introduced herself as Caroline, voice calm and practiced, the kind of calm that made Maya suspicious now. Caroline led her into a small office and closed the door, leaving Noah with Eli in the waiting room. Maya hated that separation instantly, even though it was logical. Fear doesn't care about logic, it cares about proximity. Caroline sat, opened a file and smiled. "I'm glad you came quickly," she said. "That helps." Maya nodded, gripping her purse strap. Caroline's eyes moved over the form. "You received a notice about a custody review," she said, not asking, stating. Maya's stomach dropped again. "How did you—" she began. Caroline lifted a hand gently. "We work with referrals," she replied, "and your situation flagged as high priority." Flagged. Maya heard the word like a bell in a fog. Who had flagged it? Hartwell? Darlene? The nonprofit? Or someone closer? Maya chose her words carefully, as if stepping through glass. "There's an anonymous report," she said, "and someone from an outreach group approached me on a bus." Caroline's pen paused, just for a moment. Then it moved again. "Do you recall the staff member's name?" Caroline asked, voice neutral. Maya swallowed. "Darlene," she said. Caroline's face didn't change, but her eyes did, tiny tightening, a flicker of recognition she tried to bury. Maya's chest tightened with a new fear. Caroline might know Darlene. This office might not be separate from the system. It might be a hallway connected by hidden doors. Caroline leaned back slightly. "I want to reassure you," she said. "Our goal is to support families." The sentence hit Maya like déjà vu. Too familiar, too rehearsed. Maya forced herself not to react. "Support," she repeated softly, testing the word. Caroline smiled again. "Yes," she said. "Sometimes that means evaluating risk." Maya felt cold spread through her limbs. Evaluating risk. There it was, the same framing, the same blade hidden in velvet. Maya realized she had walked into a room that spoke the same language as the people threatening her. In the waiting room, Eli sat beside Noah, trying to keep his body still while his mind ran. Noah offered him a sticker from a sheet someone had left on a table. Eli accepted it with careful fingers, as if afraid to tear it. Noah watched him, pleased, then asked, "Are you my mom's friend?" Eli hesitated, searching for the right label. "I'm here," he said finally. Noah nodded like that was enough. Then Noah leaned closer and whispered, "That lady on the bus was mean." Eli's throat tightened. "Yes," he agreed, and his hand found the folded paper again. Back in the office, Caroline slid a document across the desk. "This is the report summary," she said. Maya's eyes scanned it, and her breath stopped. Details were too specific. Noah's bedtime, the color of her living room curtains, a comment about frequent male visitors that was a lie so bold it felt surgical. Someone had been inside her life, either physically or through a neighbor, or through digital footprints she didn't know existed. Maya's hands shook. "This isn't true," she whispered. Caroline nodded slowly, but the nod felt like procedure, not belief. "Then we'll need proof," Caroline said. Maya stared at the paper, realizing proof was a luxury. People with money had receipts, lawyers, time. People like her had tired friends and late paychecks, and a life that looked messy even when it was loving. Her mind flashed to the car outside the library, to the photo online, to the rescheduled interview, to Darlene walking into the cafe like she owned it. This wasn't one report. It was a campaign. Maya lifted her eyes to Caroline. "Who sent you this?" she asked, voice steady with effort. Caroline's pen paused again, and she didn't answer right away. In the silence, Maya heard something faint through the wall. Noah laughing at something Eli said, a small sound of safety in a building built for fear. It reminded her what was at stake, and it gave her spine. Caroline finally spoke, careful. "The referral came through a partner organization," she said. Maya's stomach tightened. "Which partner?" Maya pressed. Caroline opened her mouth, then closed it, as if weighing what she was allowed to admit. Her eyes drifted to a plaque on the wall, half hidden behind a plant. Maya followed her gaze and read the engraved name, Hartwell Family Stability Grant. The plaque on the wall looked harmless, a shiny rectangle meant to inspire gratitude. To Maya, it looked like a brand stamped onto her fear. Hartwell, the same blue name that had followed her from an email footer to a TV segment to a report that knew her curtains. She felt the room tilt, not dizzy but morally sick, like realizing the person offering water had been poisoning the well. Caroline watched her carefully, measuring reaction, and Maya understood that even silence could be interpreted. She forced her face into calm, because calm was the only thing they couldn't file as failure. Caroline cleared her throat. "That grant funds our evening clinic," she said, as if money explained innocence. Maya's eyes stayed on the plaque. "Funding isn't the same as control," Caroline added quickly, but the speed gave her away. Maya thought about how the brain learns patterns. Repeated pairings create belief. Hartwell paired itself with stability, safety, support, until the public would hear those words and feel comfort. Maya heard them and felt a leash. She realized she wasn't just fighting a report. She was fighting a narrative sponsored by a logo. Maya slid the report back across the desk with 2 fingers, like it was contaminated. "This says I have frequent male visitors," she said, voice flat. "I don't." Caroline nodded, eyes on the paper, not on Maya. "Then we'll document your statement," Caroline replied. Document. Another file, another layer. Maya felt rage press against her ribs, demanding release, but she held it in because rage would look like instability to the wrong eyes. "Who wrote this?" Maya asked. Caroline's pen hovered. "It's anonymous," she said, and the word anonymous sounded less like protection and more like permission. Maya leaned forward slightly. "Anonymous doesn't mean invisible," she said. "Someone took a photo of me and my son and posted it." Caroline's gaze lifted at that. Real interest now. "Do you have the post?" she asked. Maya pulled up the neighborhood app and slid her phone across. Caroline scrolled, lips tightening. "This is concerning," she murmured, and Maya almost laughed at the word. Concerning had become the universal mask. Concern that attacked, concern that threatened, concern that erased. Maya watched Caroline's face and tried to read whether this concern was human or procedural. In the waiting room, Noah's laughter faded into a quiet hum. Eli sat with his hands folded, counting breaths, trying to stay steady while fluorescent lights buzzed like insects. He watched the door to Maya's office like it might open into a storm. Noah peeled the sticker backing slowly, concentrating hard, then pressed the sticker onto Eli's sleeve with solemn care. "Now you're brave," Noah declared. Eli blinked, caught off guard by the simplicity. His throat moved as he swallowed. "Thank you," he said, voice thin, and he didn't peel it off. A receptionist behind the counter took a call and lowered her voice, but Eli's ears caught certain words anyway. "Yes, she came in. Yes, the child is here. No incident." The receptionist glanced toward Noah, then toward Eli, then looked away too fast. Eli's stomach tightened. He recognized that tone, reporting disguised as scheduling. His fingers found the folded paper in his pocket, and he rubbed the crease until it warmed. The paper wasn't just a letter. It was a reminder that systems could be wrong and still feel right to everyone inside them. Back in the office, Caroline zoomed into the blurred photo on Maya's phone. "There's a reflection," Caroline said slowly. "Someone behind a car window." Maya nodded. "Eli noticed a lanyard," she whispered. Caroline's eyes narrowed. "Eli," she repeated, as if the name mattered. Maya watched the micro-expression, recognition, then concealment. Caroline stood and closed the blinds, a gesture that could mean privacy or control. "Listen," Caroline said quietly. "If there's a coordinated effort, you need to be very careful about what you say and where you say it." Maya's breath caught. "So you believe me," she said, almost pleading. Caroline hesitated, then chose safer words. "I believe there are incentives," she replied. "Incentives." Maya heard the corporate language slipping through, the kind that turned harm into strategy. "Hartwell sponsors stability programs," Caroline continued. "They like clean success stories, families that look good in reports." Maya's hands went cold. "And families that don't?" Maya asked. Caroline's silence answered louder than speech. Maya thought of the interview she'd lost before she even arrived. She thought of Darlene stepping into the cafe like a key fitting a lock. "They sabotaged my job," Maya said, voice trembling despite her effort. Caroline's eyes flicked to the door, then back. "It happens," she admitted, barely audible. Maya stared. "How can you say that like it's weather?" she whispered. Caroline looked tired for the first time, like a person under a roll. "Because fighting them costs funding," she said, "and funding keeps the lights on for people who really need help." The moral knot tightened in Maya's chest. If Caroline resisted Hartwell, the clinic might close and other families would lose support. If Caroline complied, Maya might lose Noah. It was a choice between collective survival and individual justice, set up so someone always paid. Maya realized that's how powerful systems stayed clean, by forcing the vulnerable to compete for scraps, by making resistance look selfish. She felt her eyes burn. "So my son becomes the price," she said, more statement than question. Caroline didn't deny it. She only looked away. Maya's phone buzzed again. A new email, subject line, "Home visit confirmation." She hadn't agreed to anything. The scheduled time was tomorrow morning, written with cheerful certainty. Maya's vision narrowed. "How did they schedule this without me?" she asked. Caroline's face went pale. "That shouldn't happen," she said too quickly. Maya stood, chair scraping. "It is happening," she snapped, then immediately softened her tone, catching herself. Anger was understandable, but it was also ammunition for the report. She took a slow breath, forcing regulation the way she'd learned to do for Noah. Caroline leaned forward, voice dropping. "If you refuse entry, they'll write non-compliant," she warned. Maya's jaw clenched. If I allow entry, they'll find something, Maya replied. A dish, a sock, a crack in a window, something. Caroline's eyes flicked toward the file cabinet. There's one thing, Caroline said, hesitating, that might shift leverage. Maya's heart thudded. What? Caroline opened a drawer and pulled out a thin folder, not stamped like the others. She slid it across like contraband. Hartwell has internal complaint records, she whispered, and your name is in them. Maya stared at the folder, afraid to touch it, like touching it would make the threat real. Why? She asked. Caroline swallowed. Because you were flagged before today, she said. Maya's stomach dropped. Before today meant before the bus, before the photo, before the cafe. It meant she had been on someone's radar while she was still living her ordinary life, believing her struggles were private. Maya opened the folder with trembling fingers and saw a single line highlighted. Subject demonstrates high influence potential. Influence. The word didn't fit her life. She was nobody, unless someone had decided she wasn't. In the waiting room, Eli watched the hallway door open and close as staff moved past, and he felt his body preparing for impact. He pulled the folded paper out at last and unfolded it just enough to see his mother's handwriting. The ink was faded, but the message was clear. When they try to shrink you, speak anyway. He pressed the paper flat again, breath catching, and he understood something he hadn't allowed himself to admit. This wasn't only Maya's fight. It was the same machine that had chewed his mother down. The door to Maya's office opened, and Maya stepped out looking like someone who had just learned the ground could disappear. Maya walked toward Noah with a careful smile that didn't reach her eyes. Noah ran to her, arms around her waist. Maya held him, then looked at Eli. "They've been watching me for longer than today," she whispered. Eli nodded slowly, as if that confirmed his worst memory. Before they could speak more, the receptionist called out politely, "Ms. Alvarez, there's someone here to see you." Maya turned. At the entrance stood Darlene, scarf bright as ever, holding a clipboard and smiling like she belonged in every room. This time, she wasn't alone. Darlene stepped in like the building had been waiting for her. Beside her stood a man in a crisp jacket with a Hartwell pin, and a woman with a tablet held to her chest like scripture. Their smiles were polite, coordinated, almost soothing, until Maya noticed how they didn't look at Noah first. They looked at her paperwork, at Eli, at exits. Maya felt the air in the waiting room tighten, as if everyone's nervous system had synchronized to the same alarm. "Ms. Alvarez," Darlene said warmly, loud enough for witnesses. "I'm relieved you found support tonight." The words sounded kind, yet they landed like a claim of ownership. Maya held Noah's hand tighter without meaning to. Eli's shoulders rose toward his ears, but he stayed standing. A part of Maya wanted to retreat into the safest version of herself, quiet, agreeable, grateful. Another part, newer and fiercer, refused to be staged as helpless for their story. Caroline appeared in the hallway, face controlled but eyes sharp. She paused when she saw the Hartwell pin, then her gaze slid to Maya, a silent warning. Darlene continued. "This is Mr. Sloan from Hartwell Community Impact, and Ms. Vickers, our documentation specialist." Documentation. The word made Maya's mouth go dry. Noah looked up at the strangers with uncertain curiosity, and Maya hated that her child had to learn this kind of vigilance so early. Mr. Sloan offered a hand to Maya as if they were networking at a brunch. "We're passionate about family stability," he said, voice smooth. Maya didn't take his hand. "Then stop destabilizing us," she replied quietly. His smile didn't crack, but his eyes cooled. Darlene tilted her head, performing empathy. "No one is destabilizing you," she said. "We're responding to community concern. Community, anonymous, same disguise, different costume." Ms. Vickers tapped her tablet awake. The screen glow reflected in her glasses, hiding her eyes. "We're here to confirm tomorrow's home visit," she said, as if confirming a dentist appointment. Maya's stomach dropped. I didn't agree, Maya answered. Darlene's smile softened. Sometimes the system moves quickly when a child may be at risk, she said, and the phrase, at risk, was delivered like a verdict. Noah squeezed Maya's fingers. Are we in trouble? He whispered. Maya crouched, keeping her face gentle. No, she said, then looked up at Darlene. Do not scare my son. Darlene spread her palms. No one wants to scare him, she said, while her team stood like a wall. Eli's breathing sped up, the beginning of overload, yet he kept his gaze on Noah as if Noah were a lighthouse. Caroline stepped forward, voice measured. This clinic provides legal information, she said, not enforcement. Mr. Sloan nodded politely. Of course, he replied, we're simply observing best practices. Observing. Another word that sounded harmless, until it wasn't. Maya realized they had come here to control the frame, make it look like they were transparent, cooperative, helpful. If Maya resisted, it would look like she had something to hide. Darlene leaned closer to Maya, lowering her voice just enough to feel intimate. You're making this harder than it needs to be, she murmured. A compliant attitude goes a long way. The sentence hit Maya like a slap dressed as advice. Her nervous system surged, heat, tremor, an urge to shout. She swallowed it down and breathed slowly, because she understood the trap now. They wanted dysregulation on record. They wanted her to become the stereotype they could file. Eli spoke before Maya could. His voice shook, but it carried. You scheduled a visit without consent, he said. Darlene turned toward him with a patient smile reserved for people she meant to dismiss. Sir, I don't believe you're part of this case, she said. Eli nodded once. I'm part of the truth, he replied. And the room went quieter, like curiosity had pulled everyone closer without them noticing. Mr. Sloane's eyes narrowed slightly. We have procedures, he said, still calm. Eli's fingers twitched, and he pressed his thumb against the folded paper in his pocket as if it steadied his brain. Procedures can still be abusive, Eli said, each word careful. Maya felt a strange shiver. He wasn't arguing emotion. He was naming the structure. That kind of statement was hard to twist into hysteria. Darlene changed tactics fast. Eli, she said suddenly, using his name like a leash. Eli froze. Maya's skin went cold. Darlene smiled, almost tender. We've met before, she continued, then glanced at Noah. You don't want to confuse the child with your history. The word history sounded like a threat wrapped in pity. Maya realized Darlene knew Eli personally, knew enough to weaponize his past. Eli's face drained of color, his lips parted then closed as if he couldn't find air. Maya stepped slightly in front of Noah, blocking his view of Eli's panic without blocking Eli himself. How do you know his name? Maya demanded. Darlene's smile widened. We keep records, she said softly. Records. The word landed like a door locking. Maya understood then. Eli wasn't a random bystander to them. He was a file. Caroline's voice cut in, sharper now. This is inappropriate, she said. Mr. Sloan raised a calming hand. Let's stay constructive, he replied. Ms. Alvarez, we can make tomorrow smooth. We can also make it complicated. Complicated again. The same word from the cafe manager. The same word from the bus, returning like a signature. Maya felt the puzzle pieces click. Hartwell wasn't just funding, it was orchestrating. Eli's breathing turned ragged, but he forced out a sentence that sounded like it had been practiced in nightmares. My mom wrote a complaint, he said, about you. Darlene's smile faltered for a split second, then returned, brighter. Your mother was overwhelmed, she replied. We tried to help. Eli's eyes glistened. You helped her lose hope, he whispered, and the waiting room seemed to hold its breath. Maya saw it then, the moment Eli stood at the edge of collapse, not from weakness, but from carrying too much unspoken pain. She also saw something else, the way Darlene's team watched him like a problem to manage, not a person. Maya took a slow breath and made a choice. She raised her phone, opened the neighborhood post, and began recording, not their faces at first, just audio, just the words. Darlene noticed and her eyes sharpened. "Turn that off," she said, voice suddenly stripped of sweetness. Maya kept the phone low, screen dark, recording without turning her fear into theater. Her hand trembled anyway, because courage was never the absence of shaking. It was deciding the shaking wouldn't decide for her. Darlene's eyes kept darting to the device, hungry in a way that made Maya think of people who didn't want truth, only control. "Recording violates privacy," Darlene announced for the room. Maya lifted her chin. "So does following a mother and calling it concern," she said, and the word concern suddenly sounded filthy. Mr. Sloan stepped closer with a soft voice that carried steel underneath. "Let's not use loaded accusations," he said. "We're here for child safety." Noah pressed against Maya's leg, small body seeking shelter. Maya shifted so he could hide behind her coat without seeing the adults' faces harden. "Then stop using my child as your stage," she replied. Darlene sighed, the sigh of someone pretending to be patient. "No one is threatening you," she said carefully, like she was placing the sentence into the record she expected to own. Eli's hands fluttered near his sides, his body trying to shake off the noise crawling under his skin. He stared at the floor seams, then the exit, then Noah, like he was choosing what mattered most. He took one breath, then another, counting in silence, and when he spoke his voice was plain and steady, the kind that made people listen because it didn't beg. "You keep saying complicated," he told Mr. Sloan. "That's not support. That's pressure." The room didn't erupt. It tightened, as if everyone had recognized a wordless truth in their own life. "Ms." Vickers tapped fast on her tablet, documenting as if reality could be edited by speed alone. Maya watched the movement and felt sick, because it looked like a story being built in real time, with no room for her voice. Caroline stepped forward, shoulders squared. "This clinic is not a place to interrogate clients," she said. Mr. Sloan smiled politely. "We're preventing misunderstandings," he replied, the smile too practiced. Maya realized that misunderstanding was what powerful people called resistance when they wanted it to sound childish. Darlene turned her attention back to Eli with a softness that felt like a blade hidden in velvet. "Eli," she said, using his name like a chain, "your mother's situation was tragic. Don't repeat patterns." Eli flinched, the name of his mother cracking open something old. Maya felt anger rise, clean, protective, controlled, because she recognized the tactic, poke the wound, then call the reaction evidence. Noah looked up, confused, sensing cruelty without language for it. Eli pulled the folded paper from his pocket, not opening it yet, just holding it as if it kept his nervous system from shattering. "She wrote this for me," he said, voice thin but honest. Darlene's smile tightened. "A letter isn't evidence," she replied. Eli nodded once. "It's not for you," he said, then looked at Noah and softened. "But it reminds me shame is a tool, and you're using it." The sentence landed quietly, and quiet was worse for them than shouting. Maya saw heads lift around the room. People stopped pretending not to hear. The woman with the tote bag folded her arms, jaw set. Someone near the door frowned the way people frown when they realize they've been manipulated. Mr. Sloan raised his voice slightly, aiming for authority. "Ms. Alvarez," he said, "cooperation will reflect well in your review." Maya's stomach turned. Reflect well, like love could be graded. Maya didn't argue. She didn't plead. She did something simpler and harder. She became precise. She stopped the recording, sent the audio to herself, and then forwarded it to the same neighbor who had once watched Noah when Maya worked late. Someone who knew her life, not her label. She looked at Darlene. "If you want access to my home," Maya said evenly, "bring the proper notice, not intimidation." Darlene's eyes flashed. "We can obtain it," she replied. Maya nodded. "Then do it the right way," she said, and the calm in her voice made Darlene look smaller. Ms. Vickers angled the tablet for a second, and Maya caught the words already typed: "Parent displays hostility. Third-party interference." It was written before Maya even spoke. A pre-made verdict. Maya felt something inside her go cold and clear. They weren't evaluating her, they were casting her. That clarity did not make her hopeless. It made her strategic. If the script was pre-written, then the only power left was exposure. Eli saw the same words, and his tremor changed shape. Less panic, more purpose. He inhaled carefully, as if building a bridge across his own sensory overload. "You decided the outcome," he said, each word placed like a brick. "Before you arrived." Darlene shrugged with a bored little smile. "We respond to indicators," she replied. Eli's jaw clenched. "You manufacture them," he said, and the accusation didn't sound emotional. It sounded factual. Noah's voice cut through the tension like sunlight through blinds. "Why are you being mean?" he asked Darlene. The waiting room froze. Darlene's smile flickered, unsure how to perform for a child's honesty. "I'm not being mean," she said softly. Noah studied her face, the way he studied Maya's, when he needed the truth. "But your eyes look mean," he said, and the sentence hurt because it was simple and accurate. Maya crouched and pulled Noah closer, kissing the top of his head. "You did nothing wrong," she whispered, "because children turn chaos inward if you don't stop them." She stood again and faced Darlene. "Do not speak to my son," she said, voice quiet and final. "Mr. Sloane exhaled as if disappointed, like he had hoped for a bigger reaction. "This is why oversight exists," he said, trying to turn Maya's boundary into proof of danger. Maya didn't bite. She didn't give him the clip he wanted. Eli turned toward the strangers in the room, witnesses, not enemies, and lifted his voice just enough to carry. "If you're writing notes," he said to Ms. Vickers, "write this too. They wear kindness like a costume." The woman with the tote bag stood. "I heard them threaten her," she said. Another person nodded. The room shifted from passive to awake, that rare moment when bystanders decide they're done being furniture. Caroline stepped into Ms. Vickers' path. "You cannot document clients here without consent," she said, firm. Mr. Sloane's smile vanished for the first time. "You're risking your funding," he warned. Caroline's face paled, but she didn't move. "Then maybe the funding is the problem," Caroline replied, and the words felt like someone finally exhaling after years underwater. Darlene's phone buzzed. She checked it, then smiled. Victory returning. "The bus video is already posted," she murmured to Maya. "Caption says you were aggressive." Maya's blood went cold for a heartbeat. Then she looked around at the room, at faces that had just heard the truth with their own ears, at a child who had called cruelty by name, at a man who had stood through pain to speak anyway. Maya lifted her phone again, not to film their faces, but to open her own camera and face it toward herself and Noah. Her voice was steady. "If you're watching that clip," she said quietly, "listen to the part they couldn't edit out." She played the audio she'd recorded. Mr. Sloane's complicated, Darlene's pressure, the pre-written judgment. The waiting room didn't gasp. It went silent, the kind of silence that means people are changing their minds. Darlene's smile faltered in a way she couldn't fix fast enough. Mr. Sloane took one step back, recalculating. Maya held Noah's hand and didn't chase them with anger. She let truth do the chasing. Eli stood beside her, shaking, exhausted, still there. In that moment, the shame they tried to pin on Maya slid off and landed where it belonged, on the people who treated families like indicators. Maya looked down at Noah. "We're going home," she whispered. Noah nodded, sleepy and safe. Eli exhaled like a storm passing, and for the first time that day, Maya felt something stronger than fear. She felt seen. If you were watching this unfold in real life, would you share the unedited audio to protect Maya and Noah, even if it made powerful people angry, yes or no? Put your answer here below in the comments. If Maya's fight and Eli's courage hit something personal, if you've ever felt judged for struggling or watched someone twist help into control, then don't let this story end in silence. Subscribe so more stories like this reach the people who need them. Leave a like so the algorithm pushes it beyond the easy judgments, and write a comment telling what moment stayed with you the most. The bus clip, the word complicated, or Noah seeing the truth before any adult would say it out loud. Put it down in the comments below, because when real people speak up, shame loses its power.